bleep just freaking happened? Welcome to Night Shift. UCF beating Texas 77-71. Eric Lopez, Nick Porcelli, Bryson Turner. Unbelievable. The second consecutive Wednesday night memorable for UCF. Last Wednesday night, UCF came from 16 down to knock off number 3 Kansas at home. And here we are as we are recording this Wednesday night and talking to you on Wednesday night. UCF down 16, getting blitzed early. It looked like Kansas State, the sequel. Not so fast. Knights come from behind and win it in dramatic fashion, 77-71 in Austin to knock off the Longhorns and pick up their second Big 12 win, their first road Big 12 win ever. Holy Nike. I've just finished screaming in my house. I know I'm one of the few that got to watch the game on the Longhorn Network. Nick Porcelli was not able to, but he listened to Mark Daniels on the radio.
Thank you, Mark.
Gentlemen, yes, shout out to the Hall of Famer Mark Daniels. That's a pretty fun call. So Bryson and Nick, I'm going to defer to you, starting with you, Nick. What the heck did we just see? I'm still stunned. Maybe we shouldn't be with this group, the way they compete on a high level. But, man, what a comeback and what a win in Austin against Texas.
You're stunned? Dude, I'm stunned. I can't believe that, man. Another big win. Arguably one of the biggest wins on the road in UCF history. We can have that debate later. Right now, but I'll tell you why. Here's what I do know. What we just saw was proof that what happened at Kansas and even what happened at BYU, that wasn't a fluke. What we just saw is that this team can actually compete in the Big 12, even when they're on the road. They showed, like, all the people saying we're going to be last. This is the kind of game that says, no, that's not going to happen. And just... my mind's everywhere right now, man. I just can't believe what just happened. I mean, you just said 16 down again, only this time we're on the road. We don't have a huge student section waving fronds, cheering us on. We got our backs to the wall, and somehow they come away and they win it. Like, that's insane. I'm so freaking happy right now. That's all I know. That's feeling joy.
All right, so first, some of you will be watching this segment on our YouTube channel on blackandgoldbanneret.com. You have the box score. Bryson, what's your thoughts? And here is we're recording this right after this amazing win for the Knights against Texas. To Nick's point, quick thought. Again, I've had like literally 20 minutes to think about this. Ironically, I would argue the biggest road win they've ever had was in the same state in Houston, 2019. When College Game Day was in Houston, UCF won that game. I thought that was that marquee win that gave them an at-large bid for the NCAA tournament. So you could argue that UCF's 2 biggest road wins ever are in the state of Texas. Bryson, share your thoughts. Did you watch it on Longhorn Network, or were you like Nick that had to listen on the radio?
I tried just to make sure I had the ESPN app going, but no, I am not subscribed.
So I'm the only one that watched the game on Longhorn Network.
Yes, we listened to
Longhorn Network like? We don't know.
Yes, thank you so much to Mark Daniels on the call. Absolutely well done. Just it felt like a saving grace, just him holding a radio up to all of Knight Nation who doesn't want to deal with Texas's BS with this network. So thank you so much with a great call. But yeah, this is definitely, I think, one of the biggest road wins in UCF history. And as far as a brand wise in general, like, this is now right there with Kansas. I think Kansas. I think the biggest difference is that Kansas is ranked and Texas is not. By the way, it is very refreshing to once again have a horns down moment. That is very refreshing. I also think, by the way, that one thing that we gotta look at, and I'm trying to look at the basketball record book right now to see if they have a section on this, and we'll see, because I know football has one. Is this one of the biggest comebacks in UCF basketball history? Because doing it against Kansas and now this, like, 16 points is definitely not like easy to come back from. So, like, is there any, like, Eric, is there anything in your recent memory? Like, are there any comebacks bigger than that in your memory?
I'm sure they have. I mean, Mark Daniels would be the better person to ask that question there. My brain is kind of scrambled, so I'm focused in the present right now. That's a conversation for down the road, because, no pun intended, because Look here. I'm just looking at this box score. UCF. This might have been UCF's best offensive performance of the year, considering the competition and the environment. Shamari Allen, 17 points, but almost all of that in the second half. The guy was a beast. CJ Walker, 10 points, 9 boards. I thought had a really strong game, maybe one of his best games as a Knight. Jalen Sellers kept him in the game, came off the bench. We don't know why. Maybe he was banged up and didn't practice. And Coach Dawkins, if you don't practice because of preparation, you don't automatically start. He led the way with 24 points, which was significant because the Knights bench, I've said this before the Big 12 started, for the Knights to have success and surprise in the Big 12, guys, I said they needed to be strength in numbers, and that is get production out of their bench. And tonight they got that. 34 points off the bench, 24 of those granted by Sellers, but hey, he came off the bench for whatever reason. Texas only had 7 points off the bench, which was tremendous there. You look at UCF offensively shooting over 50%. Fresh off, guys. We just saw them in person on Saturday shoot 29% against BYU, wondering how's this team going to score the rest of the year, and they come back a handful of days later with maybe their best offensive performance of the year, considering the opponent. They dominated Texas on the boards, 37-22, 12 offensive rebounds for them, and they shot the ball well from the free throw line, 12 of 15. And Nick, you were at the press conference, you and Bryson. Remember Johnny Dawkins said he was upset with the 6 assists in the BYU loss. Tonight, 14 assists. Got back to sharing the ball, and as a result, a great offensive performance.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, like, that's just me looking through this entire stat sheet. How do you sum it up? It's basically just saying, yeah, it's night and day compared to what happened to BYU. Everything that went wrong in the BYU game went right. I mean, arguably, it's kind of nice to see the other team have free throw shooting troubles. You know me, Eric. That's been our gripe, just their struggle at the line. 80%, maybe not what you want it to be, but it's good, especially compared to, sorry, Bryson's a little small. What does that say? 58.3% for Texas? I mean, that's just awesome to see. But I'm with you, Elo. Like, just the matter of like where they are, hostile environment, backs to the wall, and they put up those offensive numbers. I mean, that's incredible. And it's just nice to see a well-rounded attack this time instead of just them relying on, one guy. Like, no one needed to play hero ball, which is what our biggest gripe from the BYU game.
Well, and you mentioned not only the UCF shot the ball better from the free throw line than Texas, they made as many free throws as Texas attempted from the free throw line. That's a stat that Johnny Dawkins believes in that making more, try to make as many or if not more free throws than your opponent attempts. That's a stat that coaching staff keeps track of, and that was very successful here tonight. And I think the other thing is, yes, Texas, it was so bizarre, guys. It reminded me of the Kansas game. It has a lot of similarities because last week, Kansas shot 68% in the first half. Remember, Nick? We were next to each other. We got that box score, and we're like, you got to be kidding me. 68%. But in a weird way, I felt pretty good because UCF had made that run at the end of the half and was down 8. And I'm like, well, Kansas can't shoot 68% the whole game. And UCF held them to 31% in the second half and was able to outscore Kansas by 13. Look at tonight. Texas shot 68% in the first half. I mean, they couldn't miss, especially former Knight Ethiel Horton. You got to be kidding me.
I have to think there had to have been a little bit of motivation, at least for people like Darius Johnson and CJ Walker to go up against their former teammate and Ethiel Horton, who, by the way, gave UCF everything he had. He led the Longhorns.
The broadcast, which was a Longhorn Network telecast, they were making it sound like he had something to prove to UCF. Like, he's the one that left, dude. Like, it wasn't it. But here's the stat for you guys, okay, Nick? And you're going to, by the way, Nick, look for Nick Porcelli's recap on blackandgoldbanneret.com. Texas, as I mentioned the 68% in the first half. In the second half, for Texas, they struggled from the floor. As I'm looking up the second half box score, 68% in the first half, 34.5% in the second half. Deja vu, guys. UCF's defense shut them down. Texas cooled off in the second half. UCF did a better job on the 3-point line. And it was funny because Ethiel Horton, it looked like Horton was going to kill UCF the entire night. He had his best game as a Longhorn. He hadn't scored in 3 games, ended up scoring 20. But down the stretch, he cooled off, and we've seen that many times from him. And Texas took some wild 3-point shots. UCF held them to a one and done. And UCF was down 12 in the half, and they went by 6. They outscored them by 18 points, guys, in the second half.
On the road.
I mean, let's remember, by the way, let's not forget that Texas actually outscored UCF in the 3-point department. Now, granted, the free throw lines, the free throw lines
help offset that, and they got
but it bears repeating. UCF did this in Austin, Texas,
which might be, by the way, the only time they ever play there, because Texas leaves after this year to the SEC. This could be a one and done. What a memorable one.
At least for a very long time. Yeah.
Man, just when I was starting to get used to doing horns down again. Should we start doing that for Arizona State next season, maybe?
No, I don't know. That's far away. But, all right, let's bring in Kyle Nash for a couple minutes here. I want his thoughts on this basketball moment here, because this is big. We're going to talk
game, ladies and gentlemen.
We're going to talk other stuff with Kyle. I mean, this is remarkable. I don't know. I don't know if you were able to watch the game, or if you had the same problem that Nick and Bryson and many Knights fans did, which was not able to log in to the Longhorn network. I was able to log in. How were you able to follow this game?
I mean, basically, ostensibly through Nick Porcelli, who did it offensively through UCF's own Mark Daniels. So, that's kind of how it happened to me. And I mean, listen, through you guys and our communication as we do here on the Black and Gold Banneret, bing, to make sure that everything's held together, that we talk to among ourselves. By the way, speaking of Nick Porcelli and keeping things together in the network, I see he has his Knights sport coat on, so he's ready to go here.
I had to dress up. It's a big day.
Listen, I as somebody who tries to wear shirt and tie, I like it. But the punchline being this, fire Johnny, right? Anyways, no.
Are any of those people left? Like, where are you people? What? Pretty quiet. Like,
drinking. Really getting small.
It got awfully quiet. By the way, I'll give Ithiel Horton credit.
We covered him, Kyle. I mean,
listen, well, and moreover than that, and I really wish I remembered the publication and the young man's name, and I feel really silly about this, that I don't remember it, and it's completely my fault. But a Texas Longhorn publication reached out to me to talk about Ithiel Horton, and looking at his stat line, he did precisely what Ithiel Horton does, man.
Is that our buddy Eric Henry over there? He's covering the Longhorns right now. Was that him that reached out? Or if not, make sure, that's going to be tough.
But at any rate, the punchline being this.
Shout out to Eric Henry. Sorry.
Yeah, no doubt. The punchline being this, Eric Lopez, not only do I respond with Fire Johnny, though, right? I also say, does this mean we're straying away from last place in the Big 12? I'm just going to throw that out there.
That's what I was saying. That's what I'm saying.
We have beaten Kansas and Texas in a 7-day deal, and maybe
we could be in BYU. Don't forget that. We could have been BYU.
Should have.
Thank you, Kyle.
You missed 12 goddamn free throws in a 5-point game. Absolutely, you should have won that humpy bumpy. Yeah, no, I mean. Listen.
But still, hey, listen. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean that's life in the Big 12. You're going to win some, lose some.
Let's be. Fire Dawkins, because he totally did not turn the team around after that. Oh no, of course he did.
Yeah, nobody had this.
How hard it is to respond from a win like that on the road, and we just did that. I mean, again, fire Dawkins.
Sure. How many blocks did Ibrahima Diallo have tonight as well while we're here? But fire Dawkins.
Oh, he had an incredible block down the stretch.
Another one, just
really
like Kansas. He
didn't have a good offensive game, but he made up for it defensively. Had 3 blocks, including one that really pretty much iced the game late in the ball game there. But he made up so much room.
Yeah, 3 blocks here we have up on the screen. I like Fan Bryson siding with me in the Diallo fan club here. I dig it.
No, look, Ibrahima Diallo legitimately might be Jalen Sellers and Darius Johnson might be like that 1-2 punch that everyone's going to pay attention to, but that's just fine because you have that third member of the Big Three, just like the Miami Heat had Chris Bosh. The UCF Knights have Ibrahima Diallo, that tall one who's able to just send shots down when they matter. And that's really what Diallo was great with tonight. And CJ Walker, by the way, he is getting he seems to just be getting more and more into it as the season goes on. Now he's got
by far his best game of the year, by far.
And then by the way, let's not also forget this. I feel like that this was the large coming out party for Shamari Allen in the second half. 15 points in the second half alone. Ever since conference play started, I was kind of, I was thinking I was about to put out like an APB for him, like, hey, where's Shamari Allen? Well, here's Shamari Allen getting 17 points. He is now coming into this game in Big 12 conference play. He had 14 points in the previous 3 games combined, and he got more than that in this game's second half alone. I feel with considering Jalen Sellers and Darius Johnson's performances, having Shamari Allen in that picture, I think was honestly a really big difference maker, considering what the stat lines ended up being and how close it was. And Eric, you talked about how Jalen Sellers and Darius Johnson's performances have really, in a way, indicated the results of this team. Well, you throw Shamari Allen into the picture, and notice when Darius Johnson's is still double digits, but on the lower side, Shamari Allen comes right in there and not only makes up for it, but also excels enough to the point that it put UCF over the edge in this one. And by the way, every single free throw in this game came from either Jalen Sellers or Shamari Allen. Great job on the free throw line from both of those gentlemen.
It was incredible. Shamari Allen had that great dunk, too, that Lowell Galindo on the Longhorn Network said he wanted that smoke. For those that actually got to watch the game, which I did. I don't know why I have Longhorn Network and nobody else does, but I probably did.
I would recommend listening to Mark Daniels instead. I think he
is a Hall of Famer for a reason.
He's a Hall of Famer.
Well, look, I'm going to start with you, Kyle. Big picture here. I mean, you've been covering the Magic this season, and they've been playing good basketball, and the fan base, which has been loyal anyway, have been coming out and supporting that Magic, right? There's that enthusiasm that, like, man, this is a fun team to watch. They're rooting for this team hard to make the play. I think we might be seeing similar with UCF as far as now the fan base getting behind this team. I don't know what this means moving forward, long term, as far as how many more wins they're going to get and things like that. But I got to believe last week you had 2 top 10 attendance at home games with Kansas and BYU. Sellout crowd for Kansas. Great crowd for BYU. I think it was like 300 away from a sellout. Now you beat Texas. You follow up the Kansas game. Okay, you beat Kansas, which we discussed at length last week on the show. It's a Mount Rushmore type of a victory for this history of the program. But now you follow this up a week later with a win at Texas. That's another brand win. I got to believe. I mean, obviously this team will go on the road to Houston later this week and then come home for West Virginia. But this team has earned support from the community, from the students. Kyle, I got to believe, right? Like, we're going to start seeing these crowds in that building moving forward, starting with that West Virginia game at home on next Tuesday.
I mean, earn support from the fans. Listen, they better start recognizing, because the Big 12 community has started to listen. Elo, I know you saw on my other podcast work with the student of the game, bing, and I talked to Locked On Big 12's Drake C. Toll, and he is throwing respect left and right. As somebody who covers the best basketball conference in the nation, he used the phrase, and I quote, UCF is good at basketball. And that's something fans haven't done.
Hey, Kyle, who's responsible for that again?
That would be the student of the game. Bing! No,
I meant who's responsible for UCF basketball being so good?
Oh, well, no, we're firing him, Bryson. Why are you talking about
Johnny Dawkins? Yeah, the one who I wrote.
By the way, John,
we will let it go when we die.
Oh yes, no, for sure. I am loving this so much.
Let it go when Dawkins retires.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Well, let me ask you this, Nick and Bryson. You're both students. Uh-huh. Tell me from the student perspective. The student section was incredible in both basketball games, right? I know classes can be hard sometimes. We're going to see that student section fill up most of the year moving forward, aren't we? I mean, you guys obviously can relate more than I can at this point.
There is a legitimate excitement on campus that I have not experienced in my first 2 years there. People are excited. Now, I think part of that also has to do with the fact that we're getting some national recognition because of a certain announcement that a guy named Mikey Williams has made. But to me, that's icing on the cake. It started with the Kansas win, and It goes with the crowds storming the court because that gets eyeballs. And this is going to make it grow. They're winning. They're beating big teams. And here's the other thing. When they're on, they're exciting to watch. And from my personal perspective, most of my friends and classmates, they know that I do this. So I'm kind of known as a sports guy within my friend group. I am having people who've never watched basketball before, don't care about UCF basketball, come up to me and just be like, so what's going on? They want to learn. They want to start getting into this. So yes, more fans are going to show up. So look, we might not know what this win does for us going down with how many wins, how competitive they are. Here's what I do know. This win means that every home game is going to be really, really fun.
The perfect storm for UCF basketball has almost kind of occurred in this first year in the Big 12. You have bigger teams coming to campus. Kansas, you have Texas in the same conference. All the Big 12 teams coming to town.
Brands.
The second thing is that you're winning against these programs. That people love to see a team that has a chance to win. And then the third thing, fear the fraud. That's a fun social experience for these UCF students at this game. All three of these aspects combined present the perfect storm for a team ripe for student support to make it a party at Addition Financial Arena. It also helps, by the way, I mentioned the Big 12 teams. John Rothstein tweeted earlier today, the Big 12 currently has 12 of its 14 teams ranked in the top 76 of the net, which means when I heard him say this, I'm thinking is UCF going to win tonight? That means for those 12 teams, UCF, by the way, is, I believe, among them. They are at 76. They are 76. They're that 12th team. That means
this will help.
Any road game, for the most part, against nearly 80% of the league will be a quad one opportunity.
Unbelievable.
And he mentioned fascinated to see how many bids from this conference on Selection Sunday. By the way, Texas.
Bryson, I'm listening to you. I don't mean to interrupt you. Bryson, I'm listening to you, but I can't get enough of Eric Lopez beside himself with the aspect of this early success.
Well, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
I can't either. Listen, remember when we recorded the Night Shift podcast, we had to guess how many wins do you think, when is our first Big 12 win to come? Most of us said the West Virginia game, which is still 2 games away. And now we already have 2 wins. We did not expect to be here.
I think the other reason why the support will grow is the Big 12. It's an exciting league every night. I watched the other night, Baylor and Kansas State go to overtime. Cincinnati storms the court, beating TCU. It's just a dramatic league, and I think that's feeding off on the fans. And Kyle, as much as the cliche is go see go watch your own team play. Playing these teams in the Big 12 does make a difference, bringing in casual people and more interest. That, quite frankly, and I'm a pro-American guy. I have no issues with the American. I enjoyed the time, but there's a difference there.
No, I don't think anyone will deny the American as a good call it a tier 2. They were a quality basketball product. I don't think anybody here in this room is going to argue with that. But listen, man, it's another world. Listen. It's fun watching the XFL. Going to the NFL is different, but I don't even think that's a fair comparison. I feel like it's going to a different division, like the AFC West versus the AFC North in the NFL, perhaps something like that. Maybe I can't come up with the perfect analogy, but the punchline is, Eric Lopez, to see the life being different in the Big 12 and seeing UCF survive in it. Listen. Pulling off, I'm not going to go premature, but can you imagine how quiet it'll be in the halls of the Twitter sphere should this team actually get a tournament berth? Goodness gracious, great balls of fire.
Well, the good news is you're in the right league to get quality wins to improve your resume. That's the thing.
Now,
that's the thing.
Listen, I will say about that, let's take it one game at a time. It's still kind of early. We don't know what can happen. But I will agree with you. I think for students on campus, with these 2 wins and the fact that we should have been BYU, that thought might start to creep into some people's heads. I'll be honest.
No, don't ruin it. No, I just want to enjoy each game. I want to enjoy each game.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm telling people they need to do that. I'm just saying I know my
Kyle knows this. That drives me nuts. I've been on the Kyle's had to listen to me rant in the car.
At the season preview. I remember this.
Yes, I don't want to hit. No, I just want to enjoy each game. Look, and again, I want to bring this up again. Both these wins, they were down 16.
Yeah.
16.
Had
12 and a half to
they
Texas.
wanted Eric Lopez.
I ran around my house, man, and it's 40 degrees, and I didn't care. Knights win.
My guy.
77-71. I can't believe I'm still saying it over the Texas Longhorns. Hey, I know that some Texas coach maybe was upset afterwards and all that. Too bad. Get over it. Deal with it.
Thanks to the Texas Longhorns for making horns down cool at Edition Financial Arena once again. I know they didn't play there, but they're still flashing them on campus.
All right. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, we're going to wrap. That's going to be it on the YouTube channel. Make sure you tune into the rest of this podcast that will continue. And of course, if you're listening on the podcast feed, we're going to continue with the show, but we will say so long to Nick Porcelli because he's going to write his recap of this historic road win. And you'll be able to check that out at blackandgoldbanneret.com. Bing! Thank you, Nick.
Gentlemen. A pleasure as always. Go Knights, baby.
He's got the suit on.
I will.
Big day. It's a big day.
Best of luck with the article, Nick. But Eric and Kyle, I do want to bring up this thing. So Texas was 59 in the net rankings. They're going now. They got to go on the road next to face number one Houston. I mean, at least from a net ranking perspective, you look at this league, and now I'm thinking about that. I wonder, does this recontextualize eventually the West Virginia game for you guys, considering that West Virginia and Oklahoma State are now like below 140 in the net rankings to this point? Because now you have a conference. Because say you now go in and lose there, that's a trap game or momentum killer type.
I'm going one game at a time. I'm going cliche, one game at a time. I'll worry about Houston. Then we worry about you can't look ahead in the Big 12. You cannot look ahead in the Big 12. This league is too strong. You can't look past anything. The way I can describe it, every game is like its own season. You just can't. I would advise people not to do that. I would almost treat it like the NFL, Kyle, where every week's different. Don't get too high. Don't get too crazy. Because otherwise you're setting yourself up for disappointment because there's going to be highs and lows here with each game.
And listen, I think that's a great attitude for UCF players to have. But for those of us who are pundits, I will respond to your question here, Bryson, with proper context. It doesn't recontextualize anything for me. I was one of the fools that thought UCF should have their first win against West Virginia. Does it possibly put more pressure on UCF being in a better position? Sure, possibly. That could be on the table. But how much more confident are you now taking the floor? So long as they don't let it go to their head and they take Eric Lopez's advice as somebody who's following the team, I think it's safe to feel confident in pulling in the dub against West Virginia.
All right, so that's the situation. We're going to have more basketball talk a little later. In fact, Bryson, I want you to kind of go look into more details on what as we're recording this. There's some story that somebody, Tyler Feldman or whoever is looking, they're making some issue about the lineup. So why don't you go look into that, Bryson? I'll get you back in to kind of discuss what the story is with that, and we'll look ahead towards Houston and talk some other basketball. But I do want to talk to Kyle because originally, folks, Kyle was supposed to have this show off. He's got his house. They're working on his house, and he was going to be a good dad and a good husband and take care of all that stuff. And I said, hey, nothing.
Pull that off too, to be clear, but
true. And I said, because I was on his show, I was very fortunate to be on his podcast. Where you can find that your podcast, Kyle?
Oh, well, the Student of the Game podcast. Bing! Just look up the Student of the Game on Spotify or wherever, or you could check up the Huddle Up YouTube channel or the Sertoba Media YouTube channel, or any of the Student of the Game social accounts there. A7B in Sports as well on Facebook. So,
correct
places there.
So we have him on. Of course, the Ben's basketball game happens. Go figure. But the other reason he came on is because big news out of football, which we didn't expect. Like, hey, I told Kyle, take the show off, take care of that business. There's no way any football news is going to come out. Well, we were wrong. Big wrong. And boy, what a news this was. Gus Malzahn and UCF announcing a defensive coaching change. Ted Roof.
Yes. And we're celebrating the basketball win. It's only you being a good host that you raise the roof. But that being said, listen.
Explain to what the news is, because I was still trying to digest that news because I have so many questions. But tell the audience that may have missed it, what the big news. Ted Roof is now the new defensive coordinator.
A new defensive coordinator, right? We've seen life in the past with Gus Malzahn's staff of there being coordinators where they're right? We've seen that in the past on the offensive side. Well, now you're getting that on the defensive side here with Addison Williams and Ted Roof coming in. Now, some people will say, oh, he's getting demoted. No, he's not. Addison Williams is a co-defensive coordinator, but he's going to be more involved with some of the head coaching duties as well. So this isn't anything about grooming a new head coach or anything like that in my mind. This is what I see. And at this point, I'm reading the tea leaves. Ted Roof being somebody who used to work with Gus Malzahn at Auburn, played a lot of SEC teams. Well, Eric Lopez, Sultan of the stickball you might be, you're well aware that when you say offense in the SEC, typically you talk about the ground game, the running attack. Where did Gus Malzahn lament constantly about his defense, along with the fans, I might add, the ground game and stopping it? I believe that Ted Roof's brought in to address that problem, to help Addison Williams address that problem. And Addison Williams is being brought in to recruit some of the guys that they're going to try to bring in to make this defensive effort happen and be more improved. Listen, I like the move in that they're doubling down, so to speak. They got the quarterback in the room. They got a good offense set up. I think overall, the offense, while not necessarily air quotes perfect, pretty damn solid. The other side, stopping the run, is how you make this a team that I'm not going to say anything bold and say they're going to get in the CFP or anything like that, but they will compete in the Big 12 Conference, and they will be the kind of team that can finish with an 8-win, 9-win record overall and win a bowl game, right? If that Ted Roof can do all this stuff.
All right, I got so many questions, follow-ups to that. So I guess the question I have, and we may not know until we get to talk to the coaching staff at some point in the near future.
Yeah, no word on that availability and when that's coming.
Right. So who's going to actually call the plays defensively? Do you have an idea? And then how much of this, because during the season, obviously you mentioned the UCF struggle with the run, and you mentioned Ted Roof is expertise perhaps stopping the run. There were some people that suggested during the season that maybe Addison Williams, so young, that you bring in a veteran guy to help on the defensive side. I think you're shaking your head. So you believe that's part of this too?
100%.
Okay.
And let's not take away, I'm on record and I still stand by the vast improvement that Addison Williams made over the course of the year. I think the biggest reason they had problems in the bowl game against Georgia Tech was not only the gap in play and away from routine, so to speak, over the holiday, but just that rigmarole of movement, such that it is with personnel and transfer portal and NIL and all those things that take place at that time of year that just makes it very tumultuous. That's just my take.
The concern, and there's been some backlash since the hire. First of all, the Ted Roof thing, because Ted Roof this is his second stint at UCF, which is very bizarre. He was hired by George O'Leary to be the defensive coordinator about 13 years ago. He lasted a couple of weeks because he left after a couple of weeks to become the defensive coordinator for Bill O'Brien at Penn State. So that was very bizarre.
Yes.
And now he's back. He was at Oklahoma last year. UCF played him. He was the D coordinator at Oklahoma.
Right.
But according to reports, he was ousted at Oklahoma. Brent Venables decided to make a change, which is his defense and all that. So that's why some people are kind of hesitant here, Kyle, because here's a guy who just got basically let go at Oklahoma. Now, there is a connection. Ted Roof did coach with Gus Malzahn at Auburn. As there always is, there's a connection to all of this. So obviously Gus knows Ted. He's comfortable with him and all that. My biggest concern, I think some people's concern, is if you're Addison Williams, Kyle, put yourself in his shoes. You say this is not a demo. How do you feel if you're Addison Williams with this move? How do you feel positive about your job overall or your role here? Why is this a good thing for me?
Well, for one, you being stated as a you're not taking a pay cut. You're not taking a demotion per se. Now, are you getting delegated away from some of the duties? Sure. If somebody else has a chef in the kitchen, sure. But I think this part where it's alleged that he's supposed to be more involved with the head coaching duties, which to me, I currently kind of translate that as being part of the recruiting process, part of the, I don't want to say scouting process, but I think I would say that Addison Williams' voice currently is louder in the room for what happens. But I think it's the whole youth concept and having a guy come in to show experience. I think you've got that part right on the head. So not only do you still have rank, but then you have kind of a Merlin to come in and help you be the King Arthur that you can be stopping offenses in the college football.
I would like to ask, by the way, Kyle, what do you think about what this means for the linebackers? Because Ted Roof, of course, was the linebacker coach with Gus Malzahn at Auburn. And given that linebacker has been a major position of need for this, I got to imagine that he was brought in to kind of address that as well.
Well, I mean, as well, I think that's the thing, right? Yeah, and I think I alluded to it earlier. Yeah, if there's a weakness on this defense, if you've listened to this show within 15 minutes of any single episode here in 2023, you'll know that we were all concerned about that part of it, and fans would certainly agree with that. So yeah, obviously that's a focus. I can see where Gus Malzahn goes. If this guy's loose, he's getting a phone call from his buddy Ted Roof, chilling over the holidays here. Not that coaches get an opportunity to chill for that long over the holidays with the schedule such that it is with NCAA football, but I digress. It would make perfect sense that Gus Malzahn would pull the trigger on this. Addison Williams clearly sees Malzahn as a guy who's given him the opportunity. Malzahn has shown enough, in my opinion, or at least attempted to show enough to show he's not taking that opportunity away. And it's just too good an opportunity to bring in a guy that can be there to help cure these particular wound, to go right to the site of the biggest trouble that the defense is having. So yeah, that's certainly part of it.
Well, I'm going to say, I'm reading the press release. It sounds like Ted Roof's going to be the play caller. I mean, they're calling him kind of the primary defensive coordinator. Now, Addison still has the title, and I'm sure they're going to work together on that. It seems like Ted, and maybe part of it is Ted Roof's schemes is to maybe put linebackers in better position to succeed. Part of the play, right? Because I know that was something that was exposed early, and I know at times, Kyle, you were wondering about some of the schemes. Why not be more aggressive and bring more people to the box? Maybe that's where the experience of a Ted Roof comes into play. And Addison's a young coach. I think he got a bit too much flack. I thought they improved on some things, and I hope for his sake that this helps his coaching career, like you said, beyond, because I'm sure he's still young in this industry, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But I think that's part of this is, maybe some tweaks on the scheme.
Sure. To your point with the improvement of Addison Williams, it cannot be denied that a player who had 1,700 yards this year at Oklahoma State was shut the heck down by Addison Williams' defense. Go ahead, Bryson.
I was gonna say that when given that this was Addison Williams' first year of the defense, and it gives him, let's just say, more time to cook maybe as a main coordinator. But I will say that even before he took up the coordinator role, he's been doing a very good job with this UCF secondary, who, by the way, came 22nd in the nation in team passing efficiency defense. And this move essentially allows him to kind of still develop in his coaching career. But let's not forget, he's still going to be doing what he's been good at this entire time, which is the UCF secondary, which before he came along, we also had some criticisms of.
Sure. Well, I'll add this. Let's keep also in mind from Ted Roof's perspective. I think this might be him trying to find an opportunity to get his own head coaching gig somewhere. And if he comes in, if he is the primary play caller, as Erica seemed to have found confirmation of, which I haven't seen that yet. Thank you for finding it. That's cool.
Yeah, that was in the press release. They kind of said they kind of primary. That's the word they used.
Yeah, I hadn't, to be honest, I hadn't had a chance to read the whole thing yet. I'll be honest, but yeah, if that's definitely the role, this is something that makes Ted Roof look good. He gets his job. Bryson says it helps Addison Williams cook. I don't think that's a bad analogy at all. I would definitely argue there is some sage being spiced onto the recipe that is Addison Williams' coaching talent,
Well, let me clear up a couple things. It's not in the actual UCF press release, but some of the reports from some of the UCF insiders, Brandon Helwig being one of them, who's as connected as anybody, suggesting that he will kind of the primary defense coordinator because Addison's going to have other responsibilities with the head coach, which makes a ton of sense. That's number one. Number two, Ted Roof was on the staff when, this is amazing, when Gus was the offensive coordinator and Gene Chizik was the head coach when Auburn won the national title. Roof was the defense coordinator, was on the defensive side of the ball running the defense. Gus was running the offense. Gene Chizik was the head coach. They won a national title with a guy named Cam Newton. I think you're familiar with him.
You mean the guy that's been compared to the current quarterback at UCF, J.J. Jefferson? Got it.
So that's the connections there. It's that tree there, that ties there. So, all right, let me get last question, Cox. You've been kind of because we do want to, again, I do want to give you to take care of your business house there. But if Ted Roof called you, just called your house and said, Kyle, this is Ted Roof.
What's up,
Give
Ted?
me, what do I need to know about this defense that I need to address?
Buddy, you've seen the film. Get on that run game. Get somebody in the house who isn't going to get run over by a dominant run back. Because let me tell you this, Gitter's not going anywhere at Kansas State. I'll just lead with that. You need to find people that can tackle that guy and the other Big 12 running backs in this league without, by the way, being stymied out of their responsibility to stop mobile guys in the very same Kansas State, for example, Avery Johnson, I believe his name is, the kid that started the bowl game. May need some work throwing the ball, but you got to watch out for mobile kids like that spreading you out. You need guys that are big enough to take on juggernaut running backs and can also make tackles in space. Leave somebody besides poor Nakai Martinez to come up and have to do that job. And occasionally, while making great tackles that have changed games to help UCF get to the 6 and 7 that they did. Let me be clear. Safeties can't be doing that. Let's extend Nakai Martinez's career just a little bit and get somebody that can handle that. By the way, you also need to fill the gap on the outsides at defensive end for what's going on there too. Josh Shaliskar, for example, parting ways with UCF. But hey, I can tell you this, Ted. You can raise the roof when it comes to your D tackles. You got a hell of a start.
That's really good, Kyle. Maybe somebody should write a column saying, welcome, Ted Roof, to UCF. Here's what you need to do. I'm just saying, Kyle. Just saying.
But I would think there would be finding that on blackandgoldbanneret.com if it were to happen. Bing!
Just saying. That's Kyle Nash joining us. We're going to let him go so he can take care of his house. Ironically, they're not working on his roof, although that would have been funny if it was.
Oh,
that'd be ironic. But they're working on his kitchen, which I can definitely relate to. So, and I know how stressful that can be. So we're going to let you go on this. Thank you for coming in on short notice and bearing with us, talking a little hoops and obviously a little football. I mean, what's better than that?
Hey, listen, bearing with you, listen. I mean, anything that silences the Fire Dawkins crew is a good day for me.
I think that group's disappeared.
Well, there you go. But hey, an honor, joy, and privilege, guys. But until next time, class dismissed.
All right, that is Kyle Nash joining us here on the Black and Gold Banneret.com. Check him out for his content there. This is KnightShift. Eric Lopez now with Bryson Turner, who's been following this developing story as we record this at Wednesday night. It is 11:15 Eastern as we record this. So I want to bear this depending when you're listening to that. But UCF knocking off Texas. That's the big story, 77-71. But there's some little drama going on here, Bryson, with the post-game handshake. What have you been able to dig up?
Yes. So this comes to us, by the way. So a credit to Tyler Feldman from KVUE over in Texas, the ABC affiliate over there. So he captured some video of Texas head coach Rodney Terry going down the UCF handshake line saying, quote, "That's classless. Don't do that, S." So that video did not say, the initial video did not showcase what he was talking about. Johnny Dawkins, when asked in the press conference, was not aware of what he was talking about, though he said he would review the tape, and he said that if action needed to be taken, then he would do so. But once Coach Terry got a chance to come up and talk about that, he answered this question with, and I quote, about 6 or 7 guys putting the horns down. We don't do that because when you do those kinds of things, it looks very classless. So it seems like the UCF basketball team really jumped on the opportunity to do a horns down gesture at the Texas Longhorns in the handshake line, and head coach Rodney Terry of the Longhorns
really
called that.
really?
Okay, this is where
really,
I think
Rodney Terry, really, you're gonna cry and whine about this? Really?
Well, this is where I think from this perspective, because Coach Dawkins put a lot of respect on Coach Terry because they used to coach against each other. But I think that what they're kind of is talking about, it's much more of, it's not about the horns down gesture in general. It's more about, I think, the taunting effect of it. It's one thing to indirectly taunt for marketing, but it's a whole other thing, like, to the video camera in the locker room, but it's a whole other thing to just completely do it at your opponent right after you beat them. I think that's what Coach Terry is mad about in this situation. Though, I mean, it's not like, they cuss them out or anything,
Well, what we don't know is how much trash talking there was going on during the game. Texas had a 16-point lead. And, oh, by the way, you've got a player there who left UCF in part, went to your place in part because he thought it was a better situation than what he was at UCF, either on the court or off the court. You don't think that those UCF players are going to be a little chirpy there and remind Ethiel Horde? I guarantee you there. Hey, Rodney Terry, here's an idea. Worry about winning your games. If you win the game, you don't have to worry about it. Give me a break. Are you kidding me? This is the same program that has Matthew McConaughey on the sidelines, Bryson, constantly yapping. And I mean, give me a break. Are you kidding me? Texas whining. Please. God. What a joke. Go watch a Matthew McConaughey movie. Will you, Rodney Terry? You ought to be grateful that you even have that job. The only reason you have that job is because Chris Beard got into some situation and Texas got rid of him. This is Chris Beard's program. Let's see how you do without Chris Beard players, Rodney Terry, before you start barking and chapping and like telling other people how to behave. All right. UCF just won an emotional game. Maybe some of them got a little emotional, but please give me a break. I mean, I'll give this credit to USF. I don't remember USF complaining when UCF did the horns down, and that was plenty of times that happened. All right.
Oh, yeah.
So give me a break. Texas complaining.
Well, they're not used to it, and they're never going to get used to it because they're immediately turning tail and leaving for the SEC.
Yeah, go to the you guys are started all that, and Rodney Terry's now 0-2 against teams in the state of Florida. Remember, he got knocked out by Miami in the Elite Eight in the NCAA tournament. Maybe just worry about winning games, man.
Yeah, we'll see what Coach Dawkins has to, because I imagine that by the next time the next time the media speaks to Coach Dawkins, he will now have known about this. So we'll see what Coach Dawkins has to say about the matter.
But I mean, I'm sure he'll talk to his group, but I'll say this: if they're playing with an edge, with some emotion, I think that's what you want. Like, yeah, maybe that's not the PC thing to do, but you got to play with an edge if you want to win in this league. And maybe that's what it is with UCF. Again, I haven't seen the footage. Have you seen any of the footage of that footage that?
Not of the horns down. I've only seen the footage of the posted by Tyler Feldman, which is of Coach Rodney Terry going down the handshake line and telling the UCF players that that's classless. Don't do that. So
I got to tell you, don't you think this is going to even rally the UCF fans more towards this team? Because now, now people don't like us now all of a sudden again. Huh?
No, I mean, it's actually really funny because I think part of that was Coach Rodney Terry kind of elaborated how UCF is in their house and that type of thing, and I think and doing it like it's not the national championship game. I think that was one thing he talked about, like you're not winning the national championship game here. So I think part of that is also because Coach Rodney Terry is, I think you can say that, I think the fans, and I actually kind of see this too, is he's sort of minimizing the moment for UCF fans.
Bro, he's not. Who's he to say? Who's he to say that? It's easy to the cliche. Well, act like you've been there before. UCF's not been here before.
Yeah, exactly. We're the young upstart team in this situation.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
A team, by the way, that's been mocked at by many of the college basketball media, many of the people. Oh, they don't belong here. Oh, they're going to hurt the Big 12 brand. Oh, this and that. I think that this group has a bit of a chip on the shoulder. Bryson, you've been at their media day and the press conferences there recently where UCF's talked about they wanting to show people that they belong here because they've been dismissed. They were picked last in the preseason. So they're going to play with a little edge. And yeah, maybe some of them took it too far, celebrated too much. Hey, Rodney Terry, you know how you prevent that? By beating them. That's what you do.
That is exactly what you do. I think UCF fans really like it because UCF has always been really built about fighting the establishment. That seems to have been really rally this UCF fan base. It happened with football and the college football playoff. And now I think it's honestly kind of helping with basketball and this Big 12 conference, because the Big 12 conference is the conference of college basketball. And UCF is this new upstart program that is playing with these guys. And now they have now beaten two of their biggest brands, two of their biggest programs. And I'm sure they don't like, just as perhaps the others are not particularly thrilled to lose a game like that, especially with Texas losing on their home court. But UCF, on the other hand, is over the moon that they're having such success in this big college football or college basketball.
I was running around I'm running around the house, Bryson. I'm running around the house.
And they're reveling in that success. And for that reveling that is ultimately harmless, by the way. Like, because look, it's not again, ultimately harmless. It's just a gesture like, that type of thing. It perhaps you can say is immature, maybe, but look, we haven't been in this situation before. Let us be happy about it. And this team has been extremely happy about it. And like you said, we don't really know the context of if the Longhorns said anything to the Knights on the court earlier on in the game. So,
which I guarantee you probably, you got to think there was some chirping going on, especially with the way Ethiel Horton was playing. By the way, they called him IT on the telecast. That was it. But, he was lighting it up, scored 20 points. He had not scored in the last 3 games. I guarantee you there was some chatter going, Bryson, in that game. And I think UCF wanted to make sure they had the last word there. Rodney Terry didn't like it. So too bad. Go enjoy the SEC where you're going to get more of that treatment there. And look, UCF, man, that's a heck of a win. It's a heck of a win because they're now 2-2. And I want to briefly talk about it because we have not had a chance. They will play Houston Saturday. That will not be easy. This is why I think UCF is playing with house money this week, Bryson, because they've gotten a split here, which I didn't think was possible. Then they will host West Virginia, as you mentioned, Tuesday night at home. Houston, to me, arguably has the best backcourt in the Big 12 with Shed, who UCF's familiar with, and then Cryer, who is a transfer out of Baylor. Houston is very physical. This is going to be a difficult game for UCF. We'll see how they respond in Houston. And then West Virginia, you mentioned, obviously, is a team that is struggled, but West Virginia just beat Texas at home too. So again, as I mentioned earlier, Bryson, every game it's got his neck. This Big 12, Bryson, let me ask you this. I don't know if you were a casual college basketball fan prior to this year, or I don't know how much back. You got to admit, this Big 12, there's just something about it, as I mentioned earlier in the show, it's just got you hooked, doesn't it? Like the intensity level is just a different atmosphere every night. And that's why I'm saying let's just enjoy every game, because I think every game has got its own narrative.
Agreed. Every game does have its own narrative to it. Like, you think about what we thought the narrative was going to be for this team going into the West Virginia game, which was because we thought it was going to be, can UCF get their first Big 12 conference win? Instead, it's going to be about, can UCF, maintain its position in the Big 12 conference? Because now all of a sudden, we could build something with this. And this is definitely.
Here's what I'm going to say. Here's what I'm ready to say. I've calmed down. I've avoided swearing, which has not been easy. I mean, I'm a professional. I've worked in radio for many years. This has been a hard show to avoid swearing because I'm still in shock over this. And I don't know why this team just keeps surprising me. What I will say this, Bryson, I'm ready to say this team has a chance to be a postseason team. I mean, that's 2 marquee wins. I don't know about the NCAA and all that. That's way too far in advance. Again, every game's a battle. But there is, every game's going to matter. It's going to be fun. I mean, this is fun, isn't it? This is what this is all about.
Well, let's not forget, John Rothstein mentioned how every road win is a quad, most road wins could present a quad 1 opportunity. There's a lot of opportunities for quad 1 games for this UCF basketball team down the road. And so any win that UCF can get at this stage against most of this conference, most of them is a big win. And given that Addition Financial Arena is starting to become a very, very tough place to play for these Big 12 basketball programs, there's a chance, Eric Lopez, for this men's basketball team to really make some noise in its first year. And
I would argue they've made some noise already.
We honestly, coming into this year, I would be happy just not finishing in last, because that's what people thought UCF was going to be at first. But after beating Kansas and now going on the road to beat Texas, now all of a sudden we might not finish last now. And honestly, just that, I would consider this a successful season. But now I think that we still have a long way to go. Got to take it one game at a time. But let's put it this way. I think a good way to put this is the dream of UCF basketball fans is to make the NCAA tournament. And I'll say this, as of right now, the dream is, after this Texas win, I think the dream has been born. So let's see if we can keep it alive for the rest of the year. It might not, but yeah, it's a dream. I call it a dream for a reason, because nobody thought that this was going to happen coming into this one, which is why I call it a dream.
It would be something. But even so, they've made some noise. And if nothing else, you're invested in this team now moving forward. You want to see what happens next. We're going to have more on this basketball team on all platforms. blackandgoldbanneret.com. Nick Porcelli will have a recap of that game. We're going to have, obviously, our YouTube and on social media. We'll keep you updated. UCF at Houston Saturday, Mr. Bryson Turner. Saturday, I believe, 2:00 tip from Fertitta up there in Houston. Calvin Sampson and the Cougars coming off a nice dominant win on Wednesday night at home for them.
Finally, a familiar face.
Yeah, old familiar face. And then the UCF will be back home and hosting West Virginia. Let's turn our tables real quick as we wrap up with a couple more quick topics. Women's basketball, Bryson, you and I were there on Saturday. UCF women's basketball falling to West Virginia, top 25 women's team by 17. They have a lengthy break here, about a week. They will be at Baylor in the return of Cynthia Messer, where she was a longtime assistant at Baylor under Kim Mulkey. But UCF women's basketball still winless, Bryson, as they head to Waco to take on Baylor on Saturday.
Yes, and so far there is definitely some tough times for Coach Messer and the squad, because during the Cincinnati game, which by the way was occurring simultaneously with the win by the men's program against Kansas, during that game against Cincinnati, Jayla Kelly, center Jayla Kelly for the women's basketball team, ended up suffering an injury and was out for the contest against West Virginia. And I think you can really see the consequences of that in the West Virginia game. After the game, I was talking to Coach Messer after the game. She mentioned how she had to basically play Morgan Robinson-Wagwu at the post position, a guard at the post position. That is, I mentioned, Eric, at the beginning of this, earlier on in this season, that if considering the injury to Nay Hutton already, this front court could not get another injury, or else they were going to have some real plot problems. And lo and behold, Jayla Kelly is now hurt, and look what's happening.
Break down the schedule for women's basketball here moving ahead. Where can we find this first win, Bryson?
Well, I think it's definitely not. It's
not going to be at Baylor, brother.
It is the pain. I think the thing is that I actually think Cincinnati, BYU, and Houston.
Oh, read the schedule. So the
schedule, after we have Baylor, I will say this: TCU,
and that's why I wanted you to bring this up.
It's very interesting because TCU has now just canceled their next 2 games, and they've now put out open tryout calls for
That
the
is
women's
bizarre.
basketball
What
team
is
because they're so hurt. Apparently,
the question is what happened. That's what, and this came out Wednesday. That's why I wanted you to read the schedule, because they had to basically forfeit the next 2 games because they didn't have enough players. And you just mentioned it, they're in a tryout. I don't know if more has come out as we record this Wednesday night, but that UCF TCU game, when is that game scheduled?
That UCF, so that game is going to be at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, January 23rd.
So
in Fort Worth.
So you're going to be playing a TCU team that who knows what that roster will look like. Will they have enough players to play? How bizarre would it be, Bryson, if UCF picks up their first win via the forfeit? That's in play here.
Well, maybe, but TCU has only canceled their games against Kansas State and Iowa State to this point. And looking at looking at their schedule, which I mean, I can't imagine that there's actually many games at all because with Kansas State and Iowa State now out of the picture, forfeiting, UCF is now the next game for TCU women's basketball on their schedule. So on their schedule, and in fact, this occurred earlier today after the open tryouts post. One of TCU's basketball players named Deja Turner actually announced that she will be having a season-ending surgery on her left ankle. So this TCU
what
team,
the heck's going on there, though? How do you get
banged up? I mean,
how do you
get
so many players hurt? That's bizarre.
I guess it's funny. I mentioned that with Nay Hutton and Jayla Kelly being hurt, this UCF front court is having issues, but I guess it could always be worse, and TCU is worse.
So that's what I'm saying.
Which, by the way, has got a sting for these Horned Frogs because they're listed as number 38 in the net rankings. They were doing really good.
They were right there with Charlie Cream and some of the women's basketball project. Now, if you're UCF, you might pick up a win. Even if the game is played, it sounds like TCU might have players that literally are on the roster because of tryouts. This is bizarre. One of the more bizarre stories. I know you're following that closely. You're going to keep us posted on this, but that could be the spot where UCF picks up a win either via forfeit or beat a banged-up TCU team that's shorthanded. It's one of the more bizarre things. And I'm sure more is going to come out of this because I've never seen anything like – because when I first saw the story, Bryson, I'll be honest with you, my first reaction is like, oh, did they get hit with COVID? And some of their players are out. But no, apparently it's literally physical injuries. It's just bizarre. So that's the story. That's the story with UCF women's basketball there. So keep that TCU game in mind. Let's move ahead here. Quick note, softball, the American softball, or not the American, I'm already the wrong league, boy. Big 12 softball preseason poll came out, the 10 years. It's still recorded in my brain. Big 12 softball, which Bryson, I've said, other than men's basketball, I think it's the second strongest sport in the Big 12. Okay. And so it came out with the preseason poll. UCF was preseason 5th pick, which behind Oklahoma, who's the number 1 ranked team in the nation, 3-time national champs. Texas was the 2nd pick in the preseason poll. Oklahoma State, Baylor. Those 4 teams are all ranked in the top 20 in the national polls in the D1 softball poll that came out earlier this week. So nothing to be ashamed of because I can tell you that those 4 teams ahead of UCF are all contenders for Oklahoma City. But correct me if I'm wrong, Bryson. Is this the highest ranking for a UCF sport in a preseason poll in the Big 12? Because women's soccer was 6 preseason. Volleyball was 9th. I believe football was in that 8-9 range. We know where the basketball teams were ranked. Is this the highest ranking to date for a UCF sports team in a Big 12 preseason poll?
I believe this actually is on pace with where UCF tennis actually was, but of course, UCF Big 12 softball and Big 12 tennis are 2 completely different beasts here, of course. So that's going to be kind of the major difference. I think I'm just looking through at the moment, but I think the fact that Big 12 softball being what it was, being ranked 5th is still a very, very good preseason rank to start at. Here we go. So Big 12 women's tennis, Brian Kanyeko and the Knights are actually ranked 4th in the Big 12 preseason rankings for that. So softball doesn't beat out that, but again, Big 12 this is Big 12 softball we're talking about here. So it's like, well, what do you expect us to do in the first year? We haven't even played any softball yet, and we got to go up against the likes of Oklahoma, Texas, Baylor. I mean, these are like, College World Series, threats year in and year out, and you're year out. It makes the fact that UCF is even as high as they are is honestly I think is a credit to the fact that this league respects Cindy Ball Malone and what she has built with this program and has expectations for her in this league.
I mentioned D1 softball preseason poll. The top 25 came out. 9 teams ranked in the top 25 is on the UCF softball schedule, Bryson. 9! That's 36% of the rankings going to be UCF schedule, highlighted by, as you mentioned, a 3-game series with Oklahoma at home, Texas at home. Both of those teams top 5 in the nation in the preseason poll. Baylor, Oklahoma State on the road. Tennessee, who's ranked, I believe, number 3 in the country in the D1 softball poll. UCF plays them in California. UCF will play UCLA and Northwestern, both in the top 25. UCLA top 10. That'll be in Clearwater. UCF hosting South Carolina, who's in the top 25. A rematch, remember, from last year's regional in Tallahassee. A stacked schedule for UCF softball. We'll have more on UCF softball. We're only 3 weeks away from opening night, Mr. Bryson Turner. So we will have a lot more softball coming up in the near future on blackandgoldbanneret.com, as well as of UCF baseball. We're a month away from first pitch in the Rich Wallace era. My guess is that the Big 12 baseball preseason poll will come out next week, if not later this week. But we do know that the D1 baseball preseason poll came out. And what's notable about that, Bryson, Florida, ranked number 2 in the country. UCF will play a midweek at Florida, who's ranked number 2. And then if you can, I believe you have this in front of you, Texas, Kansas State are ranked in the top 25 in D1 baseball, and Texas Tech. And I believe all of them will come to John Giuliano Park to play UCF baseball this year. So we're in for a nice, fun spring here, Bryce.
Oh, yes. I feel like baseball is in a very similar position to basketball, I feel like, where they're not going to really be going into this league with that big expectations. But if they seize the moment, then they could potentially really make a lot of waves. And for Rich Wallace, I think making waves could certainly be a very good thing for you to do in your first season. Rich Wallace is basically playing with house money at this point, to be completely
Well, they're
honest.
like a mystery team. Nobody really knows what to expect, and all that is in the Big 12.
What I mean is this is his first year in a conference like the Big 12. So if things don't go well for you, then that's fine. It's your first year. So that's what I mean is that that Rich Wallace is kind of playing with house money in that sense. But you still also have a good lot of the talent from the Greg Lovelady era coming back to do that, headed by Andrew Sundin.
Yes, I think that's going to be a very key factor there. We're going to get to a lot more baseball in the coming weeks as well. I've heard some good
things. Is back.
I can't wait, man. This is great. We got some good basketball going on, and now baseball, softball to be added with that. I mean, sign me up with that. That's going to be a lot of fun. But, again, pitching's going to be a key with baseball. We'll get to more of that. Dom Stagliano, I'm going to tease this. That's a name to remember. That could be a key guy this year for baseball. Also, don't be surprised. Maybe a little bit more contact on offense, not such a boom or bust, swing and miss type of situation like we've seen recently in the baseball team. Rich Wallace likes to play the contact game, so we'll see on that. But as I mentioned, Texas 16th, Texas Tech 21, Kansas State 24. All of them play. All of them UCF gets to host. They'll host Texas May 10th through the 12th, Texas Tech March 28th to the 30th, Kansas State April 5th through the 7th, Florida at Florida March 6th. We'll have more on this on blackandgoldbanneret.com in the coming weeks. But we're going to close where an event that Bryson happened to be in person on Sunday night, UCF Cheerleading winning their 4th national championship We have a recap on that on blackandgoldbetterrate.com. We have actually video footage. I didn't even know we were allowed to be, cool. We got footage of the cheerleading competition. Bryson, you were there at Disney for Linda Gooch and the Knights winning their 4th national championship. Put it in the context for what this means.
Well, she has another rafter in Addition Financial Arena to add with that. Very funny considering this is another 4-year gap between championships for Coach Gooch. First it was 2003 to 2007. Now it's 2020 to 2024. And I think this is also a very personal one for the UCF cheerleading, because they take the title back from the school over down I-4, because USF has won this national title for the past 3 years since UCF's 2020 win, and now UCF gets the title once more. It's on their home turf all the time, so of course that's got to be very, very big for them. And just an absolutely well done performance. I mean, they absolutely nailed that final routine. And when they nailed that routine, I knew that it was basically down to UCF and Alabama. And there was just kind of something in the water. I mean, it really felt like it was their time. And once you saw them nail that routine, I mean, I think we were talking in the chat, Eric Lopez, where I remember you specifically saying, I think UCF won a national title just now.
It is one of the weirdest things. There is a following for cheerleading, but it's once a year this happens. It's every year in January on a Sunday night.
It's like the Kentucky Derby.
It's not, well, yeah. Although Brian Murphy would be yelling if he's listening to this and say, yo, don't forget the Preakness, brother. Don't forget the Preakness or the Belmont. But you're right. It's unique because every year it gets around that during an NFL playoff game. This event. And what's so bizarre, here we are in 2024. And this event, this cheerleading national championship event, will not be televised on ESPN2 until months from now. Like, what is this, 1985? Like, what are we doing? So it's bizarre. So what happens is, and you found this out because you happen to be there, you happen to cover the event, so you're posting on social media. You found out how many people care, because a lot of people were retweeting and following your tweets, every word. Because then it's like the secret games going on. Every fan's like, what are they doing? How are they doing? And everybody, and there's always people in that room that's in the event that's like posting messages on the message boards to fans, and like, this is what they're doing. And this Sunday, it turns into that Sunday night. Everybody's like, how are they doing? And they're looking for results, and it's like, it's gonna happen. And it's it's unique every year. But people care. There is a passion for it. I think more of a pride thing. And certainly it helps when you have Linda Gooch, who is an alum, an Hall of Famer. I would argue with you now, Bryson, that Linda Gooch is maybe the greatest Knight ever. And I'm talking alum, coach, you name it. Who better to be the symbol and represent UCF than a Linda Gooch, who's been an alum, has been here over 40 years, has coached the cheerleading team, has now won 4 national championships that brought to her alma mater. That is incredible. And I think regardless how you feel about cheerleading, whether you're into it, you're not into it, whatever, I think if you went to UCF, there's a sense of pride there. And I think that kind of explains this kind of hoopla that we get into once a year, where all of a sudden we all act like we're cheerleading analysts and breaking down, every move that they do, which is kind of a crazy thing, because a national title is decided by just a half a mistake, right? If you stumble a little bit, that could cost you everything. It's crazy.
I mean, gymnastics does that too, and does that too. Like, cheerleading is a sport that is meant to be judged. That is just how the sport works. It's just the difference is that, you have armchair judges, and then you have the actual judges who are there at the ESPN Wide World of Sports Complex, handing out all of the scores. It's very interesting, because this is one of the only sports that this is the only sport that UCF participates in that does that, unless of course they add a gymnastics team in the future. And given how well this UCF team does in this kind of realm of sport, I think a UCF gymnastics team would honestly be a really interesting thing to look at like years down the line. You never know. But but I will say this, as far as Coach Gooch, now that she has now gotten another title, 4 national titles now, she's already in the Hall of Fame, and her legend is continuing to grow. And seeing what this Spirit program is still doing. Let's remember, she also has under her Joyce Winter head coaching the dance teams, and they are continuously improving. They finished top 10 in both jazz and hip hop, with another all-time high finish for the hip hop team in 5th place. You also have the game day squad, who got a podium position, getting third. This UCF cheerleading squad, considering the fall of Kentucky, because Kentucky has kind of not been themselves since 2020, Kentucky used to dominate this competition year in and year out. In fact, Coach Gooch was the only coach to disrupt a span between 1995 and 2010 in which Kentucky won every single year at UCA except for 2. And those 2 years were Coach Gooch. But even after that, Kentucky was still a threat year in and year out. But their last title was in 2019. Kentucky's faltered a little bit, and in their place has been this dominance of the Florida teams with Coach Gooch in 2020 and now this year, and then Coach Ronnie Patrick at USF for the last three years before this one. And also, let's not count out Jennifer Thrasher at Alabama, who has been. Well,
let me ask that. Let's where is Linda Gooch in the pedestal of cheerleading? Is she a Mount Rushmore? Is she the Nick Saban of cheerleading? Where do you rank her here? Let's start with that, and then we're going to get into the UCF ranking. But where does she rank in this cheerleading event? Where does she rank? She has to be near the top, no?
I think she's. The thing is that, you know how you have like that. If you follow NASCAR, right, you have Richard Petty, who's up there with like 200 wins for the most all time, and then there's a mile down to a bunch of people fighting it out like at the bottom for the next ones. Kentucky, the down years or not, has the fact that they have just dominated this competition for a better part of two decades. You have to point to like T-Lynn Williamson and Jomo Thompson, like basically the staff behind Kentucky, like whoever it is. And I kind of looked into it, and they've been going through their issues so far. But regardless of what issues and stuff they've had there, Jomo Thompson, T-Lynn Williamson, the people that built that Kentucky program are definitely up there in that Mount Rushmore. I think as sort of an amalgamation at number 1. Kentucky is easily that. Then I think you have Ronnie Patrick, I think, is the new upstart in this Mount Rushmore, because he's just taken that South Florida program and done a whole bunch of stuff with that.
Yeah, but we're putting Gooch ahead of him.
Yes, agreed, because Gooch has the history behind her. And then you have, and then you have Jennifer Thrasher at Alabama, who is a threat to win this time around. And she was going for her 4th national championship. Like Alabama's 4th national championship. So that's what they were fighting for there. But I would honestly put Gooch at number 2 in the cheerleading position, based on what I have seen. But considering the controversy that's followed Kentucky in recent years, Linda Gooch could honestly.
Well, and Kentucky's had more resources. I've heard they've had more money, more investment in cheerleading. There's been speculation about scholarships, things like that. I mean, I don't know.
It's definitely like a culture over there, in like in the good and the bad ways and all that. Coach Gooch, I think, is definitely the most wholesome out of everybody.
Kentucky, Kentucky, I would compare like Bob Baffert here. I'll give you a horse racing analogy. Brian Murphy, shout out to you, my friend. Bob Baffert is like this controversial trainer in horse racing, maybe the best ever, but his horses seem to be on their substance, legal substances and things like that. I'm not suggesting Kentucky's doing it, but I know that Kentucky, there's been some stuff, I guess, or we'll just leave it as that. Last thing before we go, because we got to go. You and I did the top a list of top 100 athletes, male and female athletes. We did a top list for UCF head coaches. Was it what? I'm drawing a blank. Was it top 30 or top 40? What did we end up doing? this past summer.
That was top 30.
Thank you. My brain's, I'm still getting over this Texas win. We ranked Linda Gooch number 2 on our coaching rankings, behind only Torchy Clark. Torchy Clark was 1. Linda Gooch was 2. Lucy McDaniel was 3. Okay. Does this national title, in your mind, have Linda Gooch past Torchy Clark? If we were to do this list again, which we're not, because my goodness, we got so many things going on right now. But I'm saying down the road, in your mind, in your head, does this, in your opinion, pass her? And again, I understand some people may have a problem with this because they don't consider cheerleading a sport and all that. I get all that. I'm not here to just, it's all subjective stuff. I'm just saying, would you have Torchy Clark or Linda Gooch right now is the greatest coach in UCF athletics history?
Man, it certainly makes that debate way much more interesting now, doesn't it? It's really hard to think about that because Torchy Clark has that foundation effect. Both of them had the foundation effect. Coach Gooch basically built this cheerleading program. Torchy Clark built the basketball program. I think Gooch wins in terms of longevity. She's been around a very long time. But then again, Torchy Clark, what Torchy Clark was at a different point in his life when he founded that team. I think both of them are very inspirational people in the way that they've led their programs. And I think this is actually a very interesting comparison. So during Torchy Clark's run, he led the team to 5 conference regular season championships and 6 NCAA tournament appearances in 8 years, and including so I'll wager this. I think that Coach Gooch has definitely made the argument that has now made it much more interesting by getting a 4th national title. And I do think the argument is definitely getting much more heated. And I do think that if you want Coach Gooch to objectively, there's no more debate at all. This is honestly now the Cristiano Ronaldo versus Lionel Messi of UCF coaches at this point. I think that Coach Gooch can still, if she wins one more time, if she wins 5, which is the same number of regular season championships that Torchy Clark got in the Sunshine State Conference, or heck, gets a 6th, which is equal to the number that Torchy won NCAA tournament appearances, that would definitely put that to bed. I also think it's going to depend on what happens over the next couple of years, because Kentucky is definitely down at this point. So that means that the UCA national championship, there's a power vacuum now in this college cheerleading space at this point.
You're saying she could still win more. She's not going to do a Nick Saban here and be done. She's still got more years.
I think Coach Gooch is going to keep going as long as she can. She is a UCF.
We interviewed her when she got inducted to the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago. Maybe we should have probably posted that when we did the cheerleading. She still got the passion for it, right, as well. So she had the luxury of starting this at a time in her life where she could dedicate so much of her time to that. And I think, and so in a way, it's almost like comparing apples and oranges, because Torchy Clark had a whole lot on his plate to do, and he was still able to do that with the basketball program, while Coach Gooch is a UCF lifer. She dedicated her life to this. And so it's a little bit of apples and oranges in comparison to that. I think considering UCF fans really appreciate loyalty and appreciate people that stay, I think Coach Gooch is probably going to start. I think with this national title, Coach Gooch is now because before this national title, there was no question Torchy Clark was number 1. But I think with this national title, you now have Coach Gooch kind of coming in this picture, being like, I think people's minds are starting to be changed with this, and I now think we're getting to a point where Torchy Clark and Linda Gooch is going to be more like a Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo type of debate, where people will now start debating who's the greatest coach of all time and start fighting over that. But now Coach Gooch is in the position
to continue making her case with this. And I honestly think that with the stuff that's been going on with Kentucky, I think that if she can continue doing these national titles, I really do. She's been a consistent competitor year in and year out. And if she keeps doing that, and if she keeps winning national titles and be able to maybe build her own stretch of dominance like Kentucky had. Well, I mean, Kentucky did it for decades, but if she can win several more national titles over the next few years, then there's going to be no question about it. But Coach Gooch really made a statement, because she was already a Hall of Famer when she did this, and so now basically everything else is an icing on the cake at this point.
Well, it's very fitting. She wins their 4th national title on Sunday. And then a few days later, UCF men's basketball, we're talking about them beating Texas. So I think Torchy Clark's pretty smiling somewhere. Watching what's going on with the basketball program is, again, the big story. UCF men's basketball beating Texas 77-71. UCF cheerleading winning the 4th national title. That sounds about right. It's very inspirational.
What a week to be a Knight. What a week to be a Knight.
Regardless of what Texas Rodney Terry thinks, go cry me a river, man. Go. Wait, hold on. I'm getting a phone number here, Bryson. Hold on. What's the number to the ambulance again? Because we need one in Austin, Texas. They're complaining. Wow.
Oh man. Well,
please.
Yeah. I mean, this is shaping up to be an amazing spring, Eric Lopez, and more sports are now starting to join the basketball party. Track and field and tennis.
Yeah, we got a lot.
No, I'm plugging Eric Lopez. We don't have time to talk about it right now on the show. But keep an eye out on the blackandgoldbanneret.com, bing, because I will have my first nightcap of 2024 in the near future. Don't exactly know when it's coming out, because there's still obviously some more to come this week. But keep an eye out on the site, because nightcap 2024 is going to be on the way soon, so we can keep up with every sport that is starting to come our way this spring at UCF.
All right, so that'll do it for this edition of Night Shift. Thanks to Nick Porcelli, who is writing a recap. Check out his recap of the UCF win over Texas on blackandgoldbanneret.com. Thanks to Kyle Nash for joining us. You notice how I teased him to maybe write a little interesting column there about Ted Roof's arrival to UCF. We'll see if we get that down the road. I know you just mentioned what you're working on, Bryson Turner. Shout out to Jeff Sherr's under the weather. We wish the best for Jeff. Go follow him on Threads if you want updates on how he's doing. Just go to Threads. Go to us on X and as well on Twitter. Follow us there, as well as on Facebook. Subscribe to the YouTube channel on Black and Gold Banneret. There's more of us than there are of them. So subscribe, leave us some comments and feedback as well. And of course, check out blackandgoldbanneret.com for all the latest UCF news. And of course, subscribe to the podcast feeds wherever you listen to your favorite podcast to catch Night Shift. For Bryson, I'm Eric. For Kyle, for Nick, and the whole staff at Black and Gold Banneret, thank you for tuning in on this glorious night as UCF beating Texas 77-71 in men's basketball and more. Thank you. Good night. And go Knights. Charge on.